What would you do if you came home from serving your country and found strangers living on your land? What if they forged your name, called the police on you, and told you, "You don't belong here"? This isn't just about property. It's about history, justice, and one man who refused to be erased. Like and subscribe for more stories that speak truth. The salt in the air hits differently when you've been gone for 18 months. Jeremiah Brooks stepped out of his dusty black pickup, boots crunching against the gravel shoulder of a newly paved street he didn't recognize. The live oaks still lined the horizon, draped in Spanish moss like they always had, but what stood beneath them now made his jaw clench. 83 shimmering condos stretched across the 5-acre plot that once held nothing but pine needles, wild azaleas, and the echo of his grandfather's voice. "This land's been in our blood since before they let us vote," the old man used to say. "One day, it'll be yours." Now it belonged to someone else. At least, that's what they wanted him to believe. Jeremiah gripped the yellowed property deed in his jacket pocket, fingers twitching with disbelief. The buildings were modern, cold gray stone, glass railings, chrome fixtures gleaming like they belonged in some upscale brochure. Not on the dirt his family had walked barefoot for generations. He barely made it 10 steps before a voice barked, "Can I help you, sir?" A white man in a cop uniform emerged from a golf cart, resting one hand casually near the baton on his belt. He looked at Jeremiah's calloused hands, military haircut, and skin, and didn't hide the suspicion in his eyes. "I think I should be the one asking that," Jeremiah said evenly. "Why are there homes on my property?" The guard pressed a button on his radio. "Got a trespasser at the south gate. Says he owns the place." Moments later, a sleek SUV glided to a stop. A woman in heels and a crisp navy suit stepped out. Her smile was too precise to be real. "I'm Margaret Langston, president of the Tidefall Bluffs HOA, and you are Jeremiah Brooks, the rightful owner of this land." Her smile cracked just a little. "Mr. Brooks, I think you're confused. This development's been in process for over a year. We followed all proper channels." Jeremiah pulled out his phone and showed her a photo, him standing on the empty lot in full uniform, date stamped, 12 days before he deployed. "No confusion," he said. "This is mine." Her eyes flickered. "That's something we'll need to review in private." But Jeremiah had already seen enough, and he hadn't come home to be erased. Jeremiah Brooks had the kind of presence that didn't need announcing. 6'3", broad-shouldered, skin the color of rich earth. He moved with the careful precision of a man who'd spent years in places where one wrong step could mean never coming home. A thin scar traced the edge of his right cheekbone, a quiet reminder of things he'd never speak about. His jacket was plain canvas, boots scuffed from real work, not some weekend DIY project. He didn't come back to impress anyone. He came back to breathe. Savannah's breeze was supposed to feel like home. But today, it was foreign, like someone else's perfume clinging to the air he used to know. He stood outside the HOA's community center, arms crossed as Margaret Langston vanished behind its polished glass doors, that fake smile still lingering like a bad aftertaste. Around him, the residents started from their balconies, curtains shifting with sudden curiosity. One woman, blonde bob, yoga pants, expensive coffee cup, walked past slowly and wrinkled her nose at him. "You lost something?" she asked without stopping. Jeremiah didn't answer. He had told himself not to care. He had told himself he'd just get the legal papers in order, handle it clean, and move on. But then he remembered how Margaret had called him confused, like he was a child or worse, some delusional drifter off the street. She hadn't even blinked when he showed her proof. Just redirected, reworded, spun it like he didn't matter. And those looks from people who hadn't laid a single brick. hadn't cleared a single tree, but now stood on his land like they were entitled to it. He'd fought in deserts hotter than hell and cities that tore themselves apart, and still, he'd never felt the weight of erasure like he did standing in his own town, on his own soil, being told without words that he didn't belong. Jeremiah turned back toward the condos. If they wanted quiet compliance, they'd misjudged him. He didn't come home to be someone else's ghost. The map was older than he was, yellowed and brittle from time and pride. Jeremiah remembered the way his grandfather's fingers moved across it, slow and reverent, tracing faded boundary lines as if they were sacred scripture. They sat on the porch one humid summer night, cicadas buzzing in the trees, the smell of red clay rising after rain. "This here," his grandfather said, tapping the corner where a lone magnolia tree once stood, "is where your great-granddaddy planted corn by hand." He shifted his finger, pointing to the eastern ridge. "And here's where I built our first fence, before they let folks like us put our names on the county records without someone questioning it." Then he looked Jeremiah square in the eye. "This land is your legacy. Protect it, son." Back then, Jeremiah hadn't truly understood. He was 11, more interested in comic books than deeds and acreage. But that night, he watched his grandfather fold the map with the same care he gave to a folded flag, and something about that stayed with him. Years later, that same voice echoed in his head when he saw his mother being asked, no, ordered, to leave a grocery store on the east side of town. A cashier glanced at their cart, then at their skin. "We don't take food stamps here," she had said flatly, even though they weren't using any. Jeremiah had stared at the cold metal register as his mother gathered her things in silence. No one stood up. No one said a word. He never forgot the way her back straightened as they walked out, dignified, defiant. This wasn't about condos. It wasn't just about a deed or a name on a dotted line. It was about memory, about roots and respect, about a legacy passed down in weathered hands, stolen without apology. They didn't just build on his land. They built over his family's bones, and Jeremiah Brooks wasn't about to let that go unanswered. Margaret Langston's office was decorated like a Southern hospitality catalog, framed lighthouse prints, porcelain magnolias, and a fake warmth that didn't fool Jeremiah for a second. He placed the deed on her mahogany desk with quiet finality. "This is the original," he said. "My name, my grandfather's signature. Dated and notarized long before any of your plans ever existed." Margaret didn't look at the papers. She just smiled like he'd offered her a recipe instead of a legal bomb. "Mr. Brooks," she said, voice calm and clipped, "I understand this is upsetting, but everything was done properly. You signed the approval yourself." Jeremiah pulled out a second document, the HOA's permit application with his supposed signature. "Look again," he said, sliding it beside the original. "I was deployed overseas when this was filed, and that's not my handwriting." Margaret's eyes flicked over the page for half a second before her tone shifted. "Well, the county approved it. If there was a mistake, it wasn't ours." "There wasn't a mistake," Jeremiah said, his voice like steel wrapped in velvet. "There was a forgery." Just then, the door opened and David Okoro stepped in, a broad-shouldered man in a gray suit with an army pin still gleaming on his lapel. His presence was immediate, solid, unwavering. "My client has rights under the Service Members Civil Relief Act," David said, "and we're filing for emergency injunction and federal fraud charges. Today." Margaret stood abruptly. "I think you both need to leave." "You're not the one giving orders anymore," David replied. Before they reached the exit, a security guard blocked the door. Moments later, 2 police officers arrived. "Mr. Brooks," one officer said stiffly, "we've received complaints about threats made to residents." Jeremiah stared in disbelief. "That's a lie." "He told people to start packing. Margaret said behind them, her voice suddenly high with fake concern. "He's in demolition. He said he'd tear the place down. I told one woman she might want to consider her options because she's living on stolen land." David stepped forward. "My client hasn't threatened anyone, but you, Mrs. Langston, you've committed fraud against a military veteran." The officer's eyes flicked between them, uncertain. Jeremiah leaned in just enough for Margaret to hear. "You built over my grandfather's bones, and I'm here to reclaim the truth." Margaret didn't speak, but her knuckles whitened around the folder she was gripping, because the truth had just walked through her front door. The courtroom was cold, but Jeremiah didn't notice. He stood tall beside David Okoro as Judge Haverson reviewed the documents in silence. Margaret sat across the aisle, flanked by two sharp-suited attorneys who looked like they belonged on television, not in Savannah's county courthouse. At last, the gavel dropped. "This court finds sufficient cause to pause all further construction at Tidefall Bluffs," Judge Haverson declared. "An investigation into the authenticity of development approvals will proceed immediately." A stunned murmur rippled through the courtroom. Margaret's lips parted, then pressed into a tight line. Outside, the air felt heavier but different. Residents were gathered along the sidewalk, not with anger this time, with curiosity, uncertainty. A man with salt and pepper hair nodded at Jeremiah as he passed. Another, a woman in scrubs, whispered, "Didn't know it was your land. I'm sorry." Jeremiah didn't respond with words. He just met their eyes, one by one, steady and unflinching. Back home, he unrolled the old map his grandfather had once traced with his calloused fingers. The creases were deeper now, the ink faded, but the lines were still there, the boundaries that mattered more than fence posts or permits. His hand hovered over the spot marked Brooks Family Homestead. He pressed his fingers there. For the first time since he came back, he didn't feel invisible. He didn't feel dismissed. Someone, a judge, a few neighbors, maybe more, had heard him. And when a man's voice is heard, especially in the places where it's been ignored for too long, something begins to shift. Not just the law, not just the land, but the very ground beneath people's assumptions. The bell over the cafe door gave a soft chime as Jeremiah stepped inside. The place hadn't changed, still smelled of fresh cinnamon buns and burnt espresso. For a second, it brought back the comfort of quieter days, when he and Alicia would split a slice of sweet potato pie and dream about a future that now felt like someone else's life. Alicia Monroe sat at a corner table, her hair pulled back, dark circles under her eyes. She looked up when he entered, hands tightening around her coffee cup. The weight of guilt was already on her face. "Hey," she said softly. "Didn't think you'd actually come." "I almost didn't," Jeremiah replied, sliding into the seat across from her. "But I need answers." She nodded, looked away. "It wasn't supposed to go that far. I was drowning, Jeremiah. After the divorce, the bills, the shop, everything was falling apart. And selling me out was your lifeline." Her eyes welled up. "I didn't think it would matter. They told me they just needed some planning records, deployment schedules, boundaries. They made it sound legal, said you'd be compensated. You knew exactly what that land meant to me." She flinched. "I did. But I was angry too about the will, about being cut out. I wasn't thinking straight." "You weren't thinking at all." Silence settled between them like dust. Jeremiah could see the remorse in her. It wasn't performative. It was the kind that hollows people out. "I didn't know they'd forge your name," she whispered. "When I found out, I wanted to come clean. But Margaret, she threatened to bury me if I spoke." He leaned back, studying the woman he used to love. Not just the betrayal, but the fear etched in every word. "You broke my trust," he said. "You gave them the keys to everything my grandfather worked for." "I know." Her voice cracked. "But now," he continued, voice steady, "you can help fix what you helped destroy." Alicia blinked. "You'd let me." "This isn't about letting," Jeremiah said. It's about doing the right thing while there's still time. She nodded slowly, wiping her eyes. Then I'll help. As he left the cafe, Jeremiah didn't feel lighter. Forgiveness hadn't come. Not fully. But maybe, just maybe, justice could start with a small crack in the wall that betrayal had built. The community center was packed, air thick with fear and frustration. Folding chairs scraped against linoleum as residents fumbled for their checkbooks. Clutching forms marked emergency HOA legal fund contribution, $50,000 per unit. At the front stood Harvey Langston in a tailored navy blazer, voice booming with false urgency. "If we don't act now," he warned, "the entire development is at risk. This fund is our only hope to fight the unjust claims being made against our community." Margaret Langston stood beside him, nodding solemnly, collecting envelopes stuffed with cash and hastily written checks. In the back, Jeremiah slipped in alongside Naomi Carter, her camera discreetly rolling from a bag. She whispered, "He's panicking. When people like Harvey start asking for cash with no receipts, they're getting ready to disappear." Jeremiah stepped forward. "You're not protecting the community," he said, loud enough to silence the room. "You're robbing it." Gasps echoed. Margaret's eyes narrowed. "You have no right to be here." "I have every right," he said, "because I own this land and I'm not the one running." Naomi raised her phone, playing back footage recorded earlier that day. On screen, Margaret's voice was clear as crystal. "Legal? Honey, we didn't build this legally, we built it fast. By the time anyone noticed, it'd be too late." Chaos erupted. Before Margaret could snatch the phone, red and blue lights flashed through the windows. FBI agents swept in, badges raised. "Harvey and Margaret Langston, you're under federal investigation for real estate fraud, forgery, and conspiracy against a service member." Margaret tried to run. Harvey clutched the donation box, but it was over. As they were led out in cuffs, residents turned toward Jeremiah, some tearful, others stunned. He took a breath. "I'm not here to tear your homes down," he said. "I'm here to offer you something honest." He lifted a stack of new contracts. "You can buy the land beneath your homes, legally this time for half the market rate. Veterans and first responders, you get 25% off that." The room filled with stunned silence. Then, one by one, hands rose, not to fight, to accept. And in that moment, the land felt like it belonged to everyone again, starting with the man who never stopped protecting it. The sun dipped low over Tidefall Bluffs, painting the rooftops in gold and orange, as moving trucks rolled quietly back into the neighborhood. One by one, residents returned, not with protest signs or suspicion, but with furniture, children's toys, and casseroles for neighbors they hadn't spoken to in weeks. The tension that once poisoned the air had thinned, replaced by the cautious rhythm of rebuilding. Jeremiah stood near the entrance, watching families unload boxes. A little boy waved at him from the passenger seat of a minivan. He lifted a hand in return, quiet and steady. Linda Greaves approached slowly, arms crossed. The same woman who once asked if he even belonged here now looked like she was trying to swallow a bitter truth. She stopped a few feet away, eyes scanning the homes, the sky, the man in front of her. "I was wrong about you," she said, voice low. "We all were." Jeremiah gave a small nod. "Easy mistake." She looked down, then back up. "You could have torn this place down." "I could have," he said, "but that wouldn't have brought back what was lost." Linda hesitated. "Why'd you do it? Offer us the land, the discounts, after everything?" He looked past her, toward the undeveloped edge of the property where a single oak still stood, the one his grandfather refused to cut down even when it leaned too far. "Because this isn't just land," he said. "It's memory and legacy and second chances." A pause. "You thought I came to destroy," he said softly, "but I came to protect." Linda swallowed hard, then nodded. "Thank you." She turned and joined her daughter, who was arranging baby clothes inside a small, sunlit unit. Jeremiah walked the perimeter, stopping at the edge of the lot untouched by condos. It was still wild, overgrown, stubborn, but the view was clear. He could see the ocean in the distance, framed by pine and sky. This was where he would build, not just a house, a future. As the last rays of sunlight cast long shadows across the land his grandfather once called sacred, Jeremiah Brooks stood tall, a soldier at rest, a protector at peace. And for the first time in a long time, he felt home. Have you ever witnessed injustice that left someone voiceless or been through it yourself? Stories like Jeremiah's happen more often than we think. If this story resonated with you, leave a comment below and share your thoughts. We read everyone. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to H2 Black Thread for more powerful, real-life inspired stories of courage, legacy, and quiet resilience. Because in a world that often silences the truth, every voice matters. Truth doesn't bulldoze homes. It rebuilds them one voice at a time. We'll see you in the next story. Until then, stand tall, speak up, stay human.